I left the frozen north of Montana to drive 3,000 miles through the state of California. And on that trip, I was able to sit down with Kevin Costner himself and discuss his take on the Old West.
This was the Garden of Eden. And if you could get there, you were told you could make it yours. America is a miracle, and I love it.
I'm Trinity Vandenaker. Welcome to Life in the West. I'm sitting here with
You're looking at it.
Mr. Costner right here, Kevin. And this is the west of the West. This is on the coast of California, which is where everybody in the West wanted to come to for some reason.
The first person coming through here, Vasco da Gama, Cabrillo, they're coming up here. What are they looking for? Well, the mandate was gold and silver and riches. They're coming up here. They don't find any of the things they're looking for. What's ironic about that is California turns out to be the biggest producer of gold in the world.
Right.
So they didn't find it. But when they were cruising by here, they smelled something in the fog. They smelled oil, and they wrote it down in their journals. And I want you to turn the camera around right now. Do you see those objects out there?
Yeah.
Those aren't ships. What those are oil platforms. And so da Gama and Cabrillo, they weren't wrong, were they? Oil was dripping out of the land here. In fact, the very first oil well that was drilled in the ocean is about less than a mile north from here on a place called Summerland. And that's what was in California. There weren't very many Native Americans here. There was between Malibu and San Luis Obispo at the point just before European contact, which had been occurring for almost 150 years before they made it to California. 20,000 people between here and San Luis Obispo. Why? Because we don't have a lot of fresh water. Los Angeles is the only major city I know in the world that's not built on a river. They don't have one. And so the population was very small here. The small streams where the salmon and steelhead would come here. It was also not contested that much. Why? Because places that are fought over, at least even in Native American culture, were where there was buffalo, where there was plenty of salmon, where those places were fought over. This place, while it was contested, wasn't contested for very much because there wasn't very much. And it's come to be one of the biggest places in the world, if you will. But the history of California is no different than the history of what happened on the East Coast, what happened in the plains, what happens everywhere. Once people got wise to this land, their first instinct was to displace the Indians. And the Spaniards were the first to do it, creating missions that were not, I don't think myself, weren't religiously oriented, although there was probably some good work did. They basically enslaved the people to work there. They didn't really understand that. They thought maybe just working at the mission they could see some of the good stuff. But no, when you dedicated yourself to the mission, you had to stay there. And of course, they were nomadic. They had this hunting thing, and it was all ugly. But the real emphasis of why the forts were built was because Russia got hip to the fur trade off the California coast. Oregon, as we know, is so rich.
Right.
Same thing that Astor, the billionaire, discovered. He set up the fur trading company off the Columbia River. And so the Spaniards, being so, macho, when they heard that the Russians were maybe coming down, they created the 13 missions as a food supply, as a military force to say, this is us. So it's a long way of saying this is part of the West. And and the people that kept coming here was things didn't suit them where they were sitting.
It always strikes me when I talk to you how much of a student of history in the West you are. This isn't something that you have just started delving into. You obviously do this because you have a passion for it.
Yeah. Well, I certainly wouldn't hold myself out as a PhD, but I'm terribly drawn to the drama.
Yeah.
Because it was dramatic. Everything that happened was really life and death. The land was contested. It was a one-sided affair. And the confusion that reigned for Native Americans, the 500 plus nations that existed here, is an endless tragedy for us. It's the world goes round, the world moves, the winner takes all mentality rolled right across that Atlantic Ocean into America.
Yeah, I when I look at it, I don't see any alternative. I mean, the way it happened was horrible. But it's like one of those things where you're looking back on something that happened. But I think you pick out of it the stories that
Yeah.
or in it, the strong people.
It's pretty safe. It's pretty safe to if you want to draw some kind of picture of America when there was pyramids in Egypt, when there was large buildings in Paris and Germany, and the Middle East was the birthplace of civilization. Those community, incredible buildings, incredible. There was nothing like that in America.
Right.
It was lightly lived on. And it's safe to say, at the moment we feel like we discovered America,
Right.
that this was the Garden of Eden.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
There's no question
It was incredible out
that
here.
America was this biblical Garden of Eden, if you think. The animals, this place flourished. The geography was so varied in America.
Yes.
Mountains that seemed to go forever, that couldn't be conceived in other places. 90 million buffalo are estimates. Boats out here, even when they finally made it, I mean, if you think of the Steinbecks on the waterfront, they were harvesting so many sardines that they weren't just in the holds, they were on the deck. And they would bring it in. Where were they going to sell it to? And a lot of it turned to dog food. America flourished, and we went at it the way only we could. The people who were being denied their kind of individualism in Europe under monarchies, under kings and princes, third-class citizens, knowing that their sons and daughters would be the same thing, they heard of this place across the ocean. And if you could get there, you were told you could make it yours. And that is the thing that propelled this. And I agree with you. I don't know how it was going to happen any other way, because we didn't act involved. We acted hungry. We were entitled. And there were so many people willing, I think, to coexist. But because of the way America's built, there was other people who said, I don't care about the rules.
Right.
If I'm big enough, I'm strong enough, I'm going to take it. And we couldn't overcome that. We had to become a country of laws that try to protect freedoms, and the intellectuals can look back and say, well, we kind of trampled on people. That answer to that is yes, we did. We did. But that doesn't mean we cannot try to make some things right.
Right.
Right now, it's a single year of school and a single chapter of a book where we really talk about it. Shameful. And the ingenuity that our ancestors had to have to get across here. I mean, when you think about the Erie Canal, give me a break, man. The engineering that took you people from Syracuse over these mountains and dropped them into the Great Lakes, and America went boom. That spelled the end of the Ohio Valley. That was terribly contested, so violent. And when it was even Steven, we didn't win.
Right.
When it became sheer numbers and technology, it began to encroach. But these people were gifted in their own land. And
would you say like the railroad enabled that to kind of open up the West, right? I mean,
it did. It was now you could do it in half the time. The Pony Express was, what was it, 14 days or 21 days from St. Louis to San Francisco? We'll make our viewer look it up.
Right.
But that's what it was.
Yeah.
And it only lasted a year, but it was a signal. That was big technology. Then it was a train, and what did a train take? 7 days, 9 days, 10 days?
Right.
Most of them were derailed. It was dangerous.
Right.
It was all dangerous. Nobody was checking the bridges,
No.
There was no infrastructure. America is a miracle, and I love it. And I love our history, and anything we do to hide it bothers me.
Yeah, I'm with you there, because it was, the people that did it were such risk takers. I mean, they had to be. They had to take their life in their hands just to do anything, or just to survive.
They weren't even necessarily all risk takers. Some of them were just, they had to go along with their husbands. They weren't risk.
That is very true.
They just had to go.
Mm-hmm.
And even the husband was not a risk taker, but I don't know. I can't make a living. New York isn't right for me. isn't right for us. It isn't right. We need to have our own land. Everything's spoken for. It wasn't just a risk. It was a hope that took people. Risk takers are different than people that just wanted something from themselves, and they hoped that wherever they were going, the person leading them would get them there. I hoped that where they were going would be what it looked like on the picture.
I mean, if you haven't seen the first movie, Horizon, it's fantastic, and you can see it on Amazon. Where else can you see it?
Yeah, I think it's on Netflix now, and it's on these things, and the good news is you'll be able to see it for the rest of your life, and you'll be able to share it, and that's one reason why I made it. But I made 4 of them. I'm making 4. I've made the second one, and there was a moment in time when it was going to come out 6 weeks after the first, and it didn't come out. I'm struggling, like anybody headed west, anybody who chases a dream, to figure this out, but I will. The second one is shot. I think you've seen it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fantastic.
And you understand that the first picture was foundational, and that the second picture doesn't get any easier for those people.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no choice but to hold on to this creative rope, this dream, and to fight to bring this to an audience that likes to close their eyes when the lights go out, like to open them up and take a trip west. And it's not for the Western aficionado. It's for women to take their daughters, to look at what their ancestors went through, to think about it, to watch a boy make a fatal decision because his desire was to stay with his father, thinking it was his place. That's pretty noble stuff, and it happened 1,000,000 times in America. That's what we can be proud of. That's what can come out of a Western if you choose to invest in that moment. Or do you just want to just rush to your gunfight? Do you want to see a woman who risks everything to bathe? Or do you want to see the gunfight? There's plenty of story. You want me to kill the guy that I walk up on the hill and miss the conversation? That's not a kind of Western I'm going to make. And so here I am. I hope one day that there will be 4 of these. I'm sitting here on my backyard. It looks like life is easy for me. Arguably it is. I've been very lucky in my life. I didn't know I would have this. But my journey, my battle is very real. And it's real because something is God's put in my heart to tell stories. And to have them perhaps be things that resonate with people. These aren't things that these things have been designed to touch you. Will they? I don't know. But every decision has gone into that, and I hope that America ultimately finds these movies and gets behind them, and changes the trajectory, really, of how good they are.
I thought it was just so real, and the movie's about people coming together to build a town, right? And all the towns in the West started somehow.
Yeah,
they all started different ways,
and they didn't. And let's be really clear: what we have to take away is the misnomer that they were all coming to do something together. Coming to America was an individual pursuit, and people that got on a wagon train had to watch people die and had to just keep rolling. It was women lost a husband; they had to get another one. They had to keep rolling, and they got to a place. And maybe they realized that if they didn't work together, they were going to die. So towns did get built sometimes together, but not because there was some gigantic plan in Pennsylvania. What happened was reality hit them right in the face, and they realized that they had to dig in. That's what I love about America. That's what I love about the story. What you dislike is when you see people play unfair. What you dislike is when people panic. What you dislike is when people make commerce out of the life of another human being. That happened in the West. It can find its way in the story, but it doesn't have to be 100% about that. There's a nobility, too, inside the terrible outcome. There's a line in How the West Was Won as well, where Jimmy Stewart says to Carol Baker, he says, well, Eve, that's just crazy. You're going to stay here? That's just crazy. And she said, well, most of the people that went west were crazy. if the day I don't want to tell stories, my life is. Somebody said, well, what would you put on your tombstone? And it's like, what? What would you put on your tombstone that sum up your life? And I said, well, haven't you seen my movies are pretty long? How can I sum up my life on a tombstone?
Right.
And I thought, all right, you want me to come up with some clever thing? I said, how about, and he made movies too. Which to me is, my life has to be more than just movies. The world knows me as that. So let me do the best I can when I'm doing that. Let me represent my industry the best I can when I'm doing that. Let me do that. But you know what? When it comes after that, let me get to my kid's volleyball game on time. Let me get to his play. Let me take her pictures in front of the fireplace for her first prom. That's my life.
So work is great, but we have to also remember that it doesn't mean everything, right?
Right.
Right.
And what's interesting about my work is my choices never meant that I was going to get a job. I mean, you can go to college and you put in it doesn't mean you don't have to do well, but at the end, sometimes if you fill all the boxes, you're a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
And if you fill all the boxes, you're a doctor. And if you fill all the boxes, you're a carpenter. And if you fill out the boxes, you're a lot of things. When you say you want to be an actor, there's no guarantee of anything. No. And so what happens is a lot of people see me where I'm at. They don't realize that I got my Social Security card when I was 16. That we were not rich. This will sound funny, but it's like, the first time I ever saw somebody have two pair of tennis shoes, one that they wore and the other one was for the basketball game, it blew my mind.
Right.
You have an actual pair just for the thing? Well, I worked hard once I saw that because I needed that too. It's like, because those shoes that you wear at school, they wear down and you wear them in the game, they don't even look clean. I had a very humble foundation. And when I decided I would be with an actor, my family was lost. They had no idea how to help me. They were worried about me. There was no guarantee of a paycheck. So I learned how to frame houses. I drove a truck. I did jobs to pursue my love. And even then, there was no, after 4 years, you check the boxes and you're in. There was this single belief, maybe like going west, that I would find my way and I would tell stories.
It's been a kind of a cool trip on the way over here to see a lot of the West, because I came through from Montana down through Utah and Nevada, and just to kind of feel it as you drive through there too.
No, think about the people that hit the Mojave Desert.
Oh, man.
Oh my God, it's like, we can't go through another thing.
Right.
We can't go through another thing. But people did.
Mm-hmm.
They figured it out. They got 20 mule teams to get you through. It was just, this thing that we did is magnificent.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not run away from the shadows of how we made it.
Right.
There's a lot of people in America that played fair. There's a lot of people in America that helped indigenous, that died maybe helping them, that were ostracized maybe helping them. So there was those people, but there was other people too.
Well, I kind of like how you show that in your movie, where it's just so the different personalities and the people that are motivated by different things are in there. They're all together, coming together, but they all have to take different places. It can't all be the same.
Yeah. You're also bringing people. If you believe in post-traumatic stress,
Mm-hmm.
we just went through it's just called a different thing. In World War I, it was the 1,000-mile stare. And in Vietnam, it was called, it's finally
Right.
called post-traumatic stress.
Right.
Every war. So when you think that there was about 30 million people in America at the time of the Civil War, 30 million, right? And it went for 4 years, and people didn't serve a term. That war started. If you believe in that, people were touched on both sides, practically the whole country. Think about the amount of people that saw things you'll never be able to explain. Those people found their way out west.
Mm-hmm.
So you had people all kinds of people out here that you couldn't read. You couldn't see the wound on the inside. You couldn't see the skill set that was developed in hand-to-hand combat or absolute warfare, and then realize a rich man said, you can do that out here and I'll make you rich. Not as rich as me. And then suddenly you took the right personality with a terrible intent, he could hire an army.
Right. Of all these people who are callous
killers
on the inside, and from the Civil War.
America was difficult. Words like stranger had a boogeyman meaning. We think a stranger is just, you spell it, stranger, okay, S-T-R-A-N-G-E-R, stranger, okay, stranger, somebody you don't know. In the West, somebody you didn't know was scary.
Right.
You didn't know where they came from. Can you overlay that? Can I overlay that in my movie? Can I somehow in my movie overlay that they had a different way of having to survive?
And it was nerve-wracking. I mean,
It had to be nerve-wracking.
yeah.
There's men that stayed up all night to protect their homes
Right.
for probably 20 years of their life.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
That's really what happened.
Mm-hmm.
I'm out here every night. There's a line in the second one. I'm out here every night, honey. You don't have anything to worry about.
Right.
But man gave up this to protect that.
You know, people seek security so much, but I think something about the uncomfortable nature of adventure or doing something new, even though there's no security in it, it brings out something in humanity.
And you got to be careful with that word adventure. There's none of those people had that word in their mind.
Well, true.
They were looking for a home.
Right.
And so maybe my movies are too simple for people, but it was a home that we weren't driven by. Their exciting day was when they said, let's go on the first day. Just the same way you go on a vacation, then that 10-hour car ride turns into a nightmare.
Right.
This isn't that way.
Right.
That was the last good day.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go. We're
Mhm.
leaving tomorrow for whatever God has in mind for us. You see what I mean? It wasn't an
Absolutely.
adventure.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't stop and probably oogle and Google about sunsets. It probably gave them pause, but there was in no way that could give them a source of comfort. They were making a living, eking it out day by day.
So when you're making films, and when you're, especially Westerns, does that kind of bring some of that, like, brings you closer to understanding what they were feeling, you think? When you were out there filming and...
No, it's not like, oh, now I finally get it. It's none of that bullshit. I
Mhm.
don't. Now I finally get it. Some people can have that revelation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They really, really can. But it's like the wonder of it hits me.
Right.
How hard to get that water up here. How hard everything was. It's just hard.
It was. Everything was
And
hard.
it was beautiful, but no one had the time.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
It was beautiful.
Most of their time was spent surviving.
It was hard keeping your children clean, staying close to water. It was hard. That's our history. Not a page and not a chapter in a book. Let's expand our footprint historically to give us perspective. It will help you understand great men. It will help you understand average men. It will help you understand men of vision versus men of ambition. And sometimes those things can coexist. But there's a thing of empathy and decency that we have to maintain and keep. And Trinity,
Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. Taking the time.
The pioneers risked all they had for a chance to own a piece of the West. Today, the West has been tamed, but the dream of becoming a cowboy or a rancher is still very much alive. That's why I created Life in the West, where you can get real ranching knowledge, exclusive videos, and behind-the-scenes access to the Western way of life. If you're serious about learning, check out the link in the description.